Do you find perhaps somewhat more worrying than what's going on the other side of the green line? Do you find and do you track at all what's going on in Arabic speaking media inside the green line? And is this more religious hostility being reflected in that media as well?
We started following last year. We started researching the Israeli media as well. We're about to release a very significant paper on the Israeli Arab media. We didn't release reports yet because we felt we wanted to have a broad study before we actually released and made conclusions. One of the sections in this report is going to be on the Gaza war. We studied intensively the paper Kul al Arab, which is the most popular Israeli Arab newspaper, widest distribution. And during the war in Gaza, they were totally supportive of Hamas. I'll just give you an example. The term that they very often used in their news reporting to describe the combat, they would use expressions like, the enemy did XYZ, but the resistance did this. Now, the enemy is Israel, and the resistance is the Hamas. And this is Israeli citizens. And in fact, this newspaper is so mainstream until recently it was funded by Yediot Achronot, which is an Israeli newspaper, and owned by an Israeli newspaper. So, and they had no problem. They interviewed Hamas members, they interviewed Hezbollah members, they interviewed terrorists from around the world during the war. What can we do to support the resistance? How can we encourage the resistance? They were encouraging through their writing Hamas terrorists to kill Israeli soldiers. And this is an Israeli Arab paper. So this was very, very striking. And like I say, when we come out with this report, I think it's going to raise some eyebrows in Israel and create a grave concern because the paper is possibly both reflective as well as creating ideology.
One of the issues that's been loomed largest in the Obama administration's imagination is the notion of a settlement freeze. And what's been the perception here is that a settlement freeze was sort of always one of the desiderata of the Palestinians, but never something that they were prepared to really walk out on talks over until the Obama administration made it an issue. And at that point, the Palestinians said, oh, yeah, absolutely, we won't talk until there's a settlement freeze. Do you find that the Palestinian, is that an accurate perception? And do you find that the Palestinian media tends to be reflective of what they think they can get? I mean, do you think that they're reflective of what the perceived policy from Washington is?
I think you're absolutely correct. I think the Palestinians would never have made this ultimative demand regarding Jewish building and Jewish life in Judea and Samaria, if not for the fact that they saw that American support. And there's a very, very good reason for them not making that kind of demand, and that is that it violates the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords, not to mention UN 242, the Oslo Accords and UN 242 both say that building and Jewish life in Judea and Samaria is legitimate and legal. They don't say it explicitly, but it's implicit in both of them. The Oslo Accords say that Jewish life can continue in every what they call settlement, in every city and town in Judea and Samaria until there is a final settlement. So that it's against the Oslo Accords. It's a violation of the Oslo Accords to demand of Israel. And that's why the Palestinians never brought this up. Had Obama not brought this up, the Palestinians would never have gone in that direction as an ultimate demand, because how could they? Basically what's happened is the Palestinians had an Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords, let's say they were at 10 and Israel was at 1 in terms of the space between them. Well, the more Israel compromised and came closer, let's say Israel's moved to 5, the Palestinians are now at 15. And that's why the gap is still just as big. Even though Israel has given in on so many things, and today that Israel is agreeing to freeze settlements or most of the settlements is outrageous because it's not a part of the Oslo Accords, and it's outrageous because it's teaching the Palestinians that terror works, which is the worst thing you want to teach them if you want to have a peace process.
One of the things that was brought that continues on under the surface is Iranian support for Hamas. The ship that was just intercepted with the several thousand missiles. And is there a difference? Do you find in the Palestinian media a difference between the Hamas-controlled media and the PA-controlled media with regards to their attitude towards Iran?
From the beginning of the Palestinian Authority until recently, the Palestinian Authority, Fatah media, was incredibly supportive of Iran in their conflict with the United States. In fact, we produced a report which we released at a in the Foreign Affairs Committee, especially prepared for the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Representatives. This was in 2008, and the report was entitled "Creation of a Palestinian State: Strengthening the Axis of Evil." And what we documented in that report was that the Palestinian Authority was under Fatah, under Mahmoud Abbas, was very closely aligned with Iran, with the insurgency in Iraq, with Syria, with North Korea, and with Venezuela. In other words, all the countries that the United States feels are the enemies of world peace and a threat to world peace, these are the countries that the Palestinian Authority is very closely aligned with. And in fact, we also documented in this report they are aligned with these countries because they all hate the United States. The Palestinian Authority admires and aligns with countries who hate the United States. This is what we found. This was a, I think, 30 or 40-page report. Didn't even mention Israel once. It just had documentation on the relations with every one of these countries. Now, with Iran, since the civil war in the Palestinian Authority and the split between the Hamas and the Fatah, since Iran has continued to support the Hamas in Hamas's war against Israel, the Palestinian Authority has since then stopped being supportive or very, very vocally supportive of Iran. They're not critical of Iran. They still support Iran getting the nuclear weapons, but they're not actively supportive. But I think it's very significant to understand the report that I described to you, that the Palestinian Authority under the Fatah identifies with all those countries that see themselves in conflict with the United States. The Palestinian Authority is not in the American camp, and should they receive statehood, the United States will have to deal with another country that will be very, very antagonistic toward the United States, as are these other countries.